It's time for Retraction. I'm Antoine.
And I'm Jamie. And we are reversing course through discourse.
It's episode 85. And the question on our minds is, why is Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan? Do you know?
I assume to show support for an ally that we must provide defense to.
And why is that?
A treaty. And we have like a law. Don't we have like...
Not that I was aware of. Not that I was aware of.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I don't believe that we have to defend them.
I think we have to provide arms. I don't think we have to send troops, but I think
we have to provide arms. Yeah.
So defense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's defense. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So do you think that's it? You think that's the only reason?
Oh, I mean, I have no idea. Probably. I mean, who knows what signs and signals we want to send? What leverage that sends?
Has nothing to do with the semiconductor shortage. The fact that they're the only ones who make them.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah. Probably. It has nothing to do with the fact that our great members of Congress have very intricate ties to the Silicon Valley. And
you're saying their stocks are down?
I'm just saying, maybe as a California representative, the number one sort of caretaker for Silicon Valley out there, maybe there was a little bit of a nudge for you to shore up that shareholder support to say that we are not.
Kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, we're not going to lose. Yeah, we're not going to lose these semiconductors. Don't worry, everybody. They're ready and revved up to get going once again, and the U.S. military will protect your corporate interests. They will kill people and send people.
Well,
to
that's
die.
the big question, though, is what we would do if China actually became like aggressive.
Oh, you would send them arms, just like Ukraine.
Yeah, I think that's probably it, though.
Yeah, no, that would definitely be it. But I guess there were just, you got to do that show of support so that the shareholders.
But so I would be more concerned. Mm-hmm. So when we recorded, when Ukraine first broke out, I was of the mind, based on just Russia's resources, that they weren't. I mean, they're brutal and terrible, but they're not the boogeyman that we thought they would be. They have nukes. That's kind of what their claim to fame is. But militarily, they don't really have what it takes to steamroll over countries. And that's proving out. China, on the other hand, has more money than anyone. And I would be concerned with Taiwan's ability, even if we were providing arms, with their ability to withstand them. So that's where my concern would come in, and why it differs from the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. I'm not sure that just providing them with arms would do it.
Yeah. But but then there's also sort of the reasoning. It's sort of like, well, we're gonna, are we providing them with arms as a humanitarian ask to ensure sovereignty and to ensure that people are not necessarily oppressed if they do not want to be oppressed by a larger nation, a neighboring nation, for instance? Or is this a corporate war where you're just simply sending arms in order to protect our national interest because corporations need
both because they're not separated?
Yeah, that's what I guess. Is it?
I don't know.
Both though? Is it? Just one.
Well, people live there. I mean, there are human beings there that will be impacted.
Okay. I mean, like, yeah. Hopefully, we do not just send. We do not just do an umbrella protection over the semiconductor island, and just to make sure that stays safe. Because I mean, China's not going to destroy that either.
But it's interesting because you would say that we police resource-rich nations, right? In terms of, we will protect you if we have interests there, and they clearly are. They're making these. Who is
the we? That's the question I'm really asking. Like, is it me and you? Because it's not me. I mean, it doesn't help us. I mean, it doesn't.
Our tax dollars.
Is it?
I'm saying, aren't our tax dollars used to police the world?
They are, but is it to our benefit? Are they being used in order to enrich your life or to make my life better? Or are they being used?
You get oranges in December.
I mean,
no, but
is that Florida oranges? I don't know what you're trying to say here. Yeah, because Florida's warm all year round. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I think they come from other places. some period of time. But the point is that what you are sold is that we are the police force of the world, and that gives us certain conveniences that you can't find in other places. What it sacrifices, to what you've brought up many times before, are social safety programs, and just like social programs in general, regular things that impact civilians. But we're fed that we have conveniences, and I'm sure some of it is true, but it's almost like that old Bush thing, like trading nukes for mangoes. It's like, what do we really get out of all of this? So I don't know. A steady supply of resources, a global footprint. Yeah, I mean, like do we get the cheapest price? We'll secure you, but you give us the best deal.
I mean,
we are the
how
largest.
Do we know? I mean, how do we know what the pricing would really shake out to? Because at the end of the day, these are going to private entities. We're sending.
Yeah, but look, other countries, even when you go drive, I mean, now is not probably the greatest example, but when you would go drive in other countries, the gas prices would be tremendously higher than they would here.
Yeah, well, okay, that's true. That's true.
So, I mean, that would be like an example of the benefit. Now,
but again, that's because we have our own gas as well. We're not solely dependent on Russia, for instance, to supply us with gas.
So I guess the question would be things that include for this semiconductors. Do we pay a cheaper rate for devices that have semiconductors than other countries?
I would say yes, we do. I would actually, I do believe we do. Yes, I'll go out on a limb and say that we do in fact pay less of a rate, but that's not necessarily up to like the government doing that. I mean, that's just sort of how private entity chooses to play. Like Apple, for instance, when they send MacBooks abroad, they choose to price them at a higher price point than they. You don't think that at home
the export and import, anything like that, the tariffs, anything like that plays a role though?
But
I'm sure it helps the business make decisions, but that would be something that we would negotiate, right? And then.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is that when Germany gets MacBooks, the tariffs they're placing on Apple are tariffs are something that Germany is doing. So if they wanted to make them cheaper, they could try to go out and make them cheaper. I don't think that they are paying a premium because of the materials that are being accrued in order to create.
No, but for the U.S. to say manufacture something, or for another country to manufacture, and I'm sure that there is a more complex trade agreement than just between two countries, right? There's probably weird partnerships that I really can't imagine, but the value chain to manufacture these things, I'm sure, all worked out where one country can produce things at a cheaper rate, and then through this partnership and agreement, okay, I'll export these to you for a cheaper rate, but you have to sell it to them for this rate. I mean, I'm sure stuff like that was worked out because everything kind of is connected.
Yeah, I'm not gonna definitely. Yeah, I have to agree because I don't know enough to disagree.
I mean, neither do I. And I'm kind of making it up, but if someone told me that, I'd say,
it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah.
So that's the convenience. Now, the question is it worth it?
Well, that's sort of the question I'm proposing. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, is this provocation worth it in order to just simply shore up some shareholder interest, like to make shareholders not feel skittish and start a downturn in the market? And the thing is, that's the other problem when you have representatives that are so closely aligned with corporate entities or corporate businesses, is that it makes you very cynical when they do things that are this provocative, because you're trying to say, well, are you doing this to save my job? Are you doing this to make a stronger market so that our companies don't feel this pressure to start laying off workers in order to maintain maximum profitability? Or are you doing this because your particular pocket, and you're one of the wealthiest members of Congress, is your pocket beginning to feel it with the semiconductor shortage? Do you want to make sure that your own bottom line stays as high as possible, and it actually has nothing to do with national security or the greater good of the world or the people living in the country that you represent? So yeah, I mean that's the problem. You end up being very cynical. You're like, well,
like, I guess if they pass the act to ban Congress from trading stocks, you would have your answer.
I would. You're right. You would start to feel a little better about these, and then it would help to frame them so that you could speak about them, I think, with greater surety that these are purely about, it's about a show of power, maybe, or just to say.
I guess my question to you is
for people,
because nothing is pure. There's always ulterior motives and things like that. And, there's always like dual purpose to things, and probably more than two purposes. Yeah. But at the end of the day, is it good? Like, does the reasoning matter? Is it good to do that, what she's doing? Because if you said that she wasn't trading stocks, would you agree with her move?
Well, here's the thing. Would you make the move? Would there be a necessity? Would there be?
I don't know if that matters, though. It's the fact that not that whether or not, because then you're saying, well, should she have made it and she didn't, and then why didn't she? That's a misstep in partnership. I'm just asking, if Taiwan is being threatened by China, and she's going over there to show support, regardless of what's really going on, like, is that needed on it? Like, is there any purpose to that?
But I think it's similar to what you said. I don't think you can separate the two because of the fact that the last seated member of our government to visit was Newt Gingrich back in '97. And are we to believe that there has been any ramp up in the aggression necessarily towards Taiwan that would merit such a visit without any corporate influence? That's the question.
Well,
that's the hard question.
China just recently do something? I mean, I'm not all caught up on.
Well,
this,
they're constantly doing things.
But didn't they just dissolve something where they're not independent anymore, or at least how China sees it? Didn't something change recently?
China never saw them as independent.
Yeah, but didn't something recently change?
I'm not aware of anything that was massively newsworthy that changed with regard to. I know that people have been talking more about it with the Russian invasion of Ukraine. People have said that if Russia goes unchecked in that matter, it may sort of give some sort of clearance to China that they can do something similar without necessarily feeling adverse effects. But I have not heard of anything, and there's nothing in any of the reporting of Nancy Pelosi going to Taiwan that is referenced anything. I read several articles today about this, trying to figure out if anyone has a definitive reasoning as to why she is going. Not one of them has mentioned something recently significant with regard to China's policy on Taiwan as this is why she's going, because China has chosen to do this. Everything has been historical that I've read. Everything has been historical and simply about various provocations that may have happened recently, but nothing that is necessarily out of the ordinary. Most of the ramped up rhetoric from China is in response to Nancy Pelosi deciding to go. That's where a majority of the rhetoric is coming from. Most of the belligerence is coming from her going. That's where
I thought that they just did something, like they took over more islands and they did something like dissolved something or.
We could do a retraction on that because that's what this show is about. So, I mean, I did research. I did not come across that, but it doesn't mean that it didn't occur. So there's definitely something to be said for that. But that was on my mind. That was my big, I was like, why is no one really, saying, hey, this is why she's going. This is the necessity, the need to do it now. We're already supporting one country with billions of dollars in arms in order to thwart the advances of a would-be aggressor. And it doesn't seem smart to be doing it on two fronts. So, that was my initial reaction and sort of the questions I had. And I didn't really get much of a satisfaction.
It says America by law is bound to provide arms. It with the means to defend itself. But okay. I think we also adopted some like one China policy. I'm trying to find, and I can't find it, what may have changed recently.
Well, I mean, yeah, recently, I don't know, but we've sort of done a little bit of human and hawing when it comes to our, it's a tightrope. I mean, we're not foreign policy experts, but in the 70s, there was sort of a change in terms of policy of recognizing, the Chinese government. And then you could go on from there in terms of our not respect, but basically us sort of acknowledging the communist, regime in China to basically where we lead up to today. I'm just saying it's been a long story. It's been a long journey, people. But yeah, I don't know of anything that happened in the recent days. What I was going to go into was actually the CHIP Act. What is it? It's like the Chip and Science Act that may have just been Biden's supposed to be able to sign it because Congress passed it. I don't remember where it went with the Senate, but I think it's heading to Biden's desk at the moment. So I think it's going through. I think it's like something around $50 billion for that's going to be spent out to various private technology companies in order to start spinning up factories that are going to start building semiconductors in-house so that we don't have this massive vulnerability in case Taiwan were to be taken over by China, and we're not left holding this bag of doo-doo when it comes to of not having any semiconductors for any of the technology, which semiconductors are basically in every form of technology you could possibly think of.
Now, is it meant to supplant our dependency so that we're self-sufficient, or just supplement?
I think it's supplement. Don't quote me on that, but I haven't read anything to say that we will, that I haven't read anything about the act to say that this is about ensuring that we no longer need to partner with anyone else after this period of years. I was hoping that there was an actual deadline, which it doesn't seem that there is, with regard to how fast we might be able to ramp this up. Everything I'm reading says that it will definitely take years at the very least. So that's definitely interesting. Again, why we would still need to go shore up our allegiance with Taiwan, because if they get taken over tomorrow, we're definitely SOL. So it's going to take some time. I feel like when people say years, it means that we're at least looking at a decade before we're in a position to say that we are building semiconductors to the quality, because that's the other thing. It's the advancement. It's not just building any semiconductors. It's to the quality and level at which Taiwanese factories are able to build semiconductors that is required for some of the most advanced pieces of our own technology at home. So that is interesting.
If we were required to provide Taiwan with arms in the case of a conflict, especially with China, would it be in our interest to show a strong gesture of support prior to any start of conflict to try and stave it off so that we do not have to spend billions on providing arms?
I mean, that's a game of chicken. It's an impossible question for people like us to answer. That's a question that people in the military, people who are doing this kind of strategy work for a living, would need to. You have to know the temperature of your adversary to answer that question, and we don't. I mean, we're only getting reports in house. I can't read Mandarin or Cantonese. I don't know what Chinese newspapers are actually saying about their own government or about this. We can only get reports at home that are translated. And that's, there's always going to be a slight or a lens with which the way something is being reported. So
I think I think we would have to do more as a country to show our resolve in sending Nancy Pelosi there in order to deter anyone from invading.
We used to do military drills,
but even more than that, we did it with Ukraine. The thing with Ukraine is we evacuated everything. We pulled all of our assets out of there instead of piling them in. I'm curious if we were to pile assets in, if a country would think twice.
I don't know. Again, you really have to know your ally.
But I hear you on the cynicism, and I'm sure it's well founded, and it's probably right. I just don't know if it's solely right. I feel like everything's right.
Well, I think that's where you can leave it, because we're not going to get anywhere beyond that unless there is more that comes out with regard to how much of Nancy Pelosi's current income comes from either parts of military suppliers or
doesn't she have to disclose that? Doesn't she have to disclose?
I do not. I don't know. No. I mean, how much money? She is worth a ridiculous amount of money. I was going to say, is she a billionaire? But she's definitely close. I would definitely say.
Oh, really?
That. She's
got hundreds and hundreds of millions?
Super rich. She's the richest person in government.
That's nice for her.
So, and her state happens to be the tech state, and she's going to check on semiconductors. I'm not
Sounds like coincidence, Antoine.
It's a lot of coincidences. It's just a lot of coincidences, which can be founded. You don't want to judge a book by its cover. There's a lot of coincidence that could just be, it just happens to be what it is.
She's just really pro-science.
That very well could be it. Now, here's the other thing on the back half of this, because I did being fully for a deep dive on this, but I can't leave it alone. More cynicism comes in with the actual act itself, because the idea of pouring billions more of taxpayer dollars to support the tech industry to now go and build semiconductors, and then everyone's like, well, you have to do it because we live in a capitalist society and you can't just force these companies to do it. You have to incentivize them to do it. And I'm like, all right, that's an interesting approach and an interesting take on capitalism. That doesn't, it's like, if these companies don't want to do it, then obviously it's just not profitable to them. And maybe they should just be left alone to just do what they think is profitable. And someone like the government, who is deciding that this is a necessity, this is a national security risk, should just build their own semiconductor manufacturing plants on their own. Like, it should just be the government should just take the money and build the plants. That's what governments are supposed to do. We don't lease out. Yeah.
Or contract companies to do it. I mean, we don't need to actually do it in-house, right?
I mean, I hate this whole idea of this contracting nonsense. It came into play when we talked about, can you save the cities on the coast? And I'm like, a dying city is far more profitable than a successful one. Whatever, however, fine. You want to contract it out and their actual government facilities. All I'm saying is that if the government is putting this much of a premium to say that semiconductors are necessary, perhaps the government should just have taken the step to say, we're going to build them, and then we're going to sell the chips out because we're the ones investing the money. We're using taxpayer money to do this. So instead of having the consumer rebuy something that they've already spent money on, we're going to do it in a more efficient way, which is we're going to build these. We're going to employ taxpayers to work at these facilities, and then we'll figure out what might be a fair price for private entity to acquire these chips from us. And that way,
but where does that doesn't happen with anything?
It doesn't, but it should. That's my point.
You still pay for stamps. You still pay for shipping things. Like, it's not like, well, we pay for that, so we get it for free or at cost.
You
like,
should
that
be,
doesn't happen.
But I'm just proposing a difference. I'm thinking outside the box. I'm trying to say you've already paid for it. It's a double dip. If I've already by taxes, if your taxes are paying for stamps, it's a double dip for the government. That's a tax for me to pay taxes to create the stamp, and then to pay again to acquire the stamp means the government has taxed me twice. That's just the
or
fact.
We just pay cost, like, but that doesn't happen.
That's my point. My point is the what is it? The world's your oyster. Once you start on initiatives like that, generational projects like this, this rubber stamp of, oh man, whatever can we do? We must pay private entities all this money in order to save us from ourselves. It's just, to me, it's mind-boggling. It just, on a factual level, like as I'm saying it, what I'm saying to me is the most logical way a government should have looked at this. It is completely illogical to say that we need to garner all this money from the taxpayers and give it to companies that make billions of dollars who choose to make their products or to rely on offshore industries in order to keep their own costs down so that they can pay their own CEOs. How do you evaluate and make their profit?
How do you evaluate what a government needs to manufacture or produce or provide?
I would assume that if it falls under the scale of national security, that's something the government should be doing. That's how I would define it. I think
so. There would be no oil refinery companies, no gas company, like everything that is critical to our lives.
Well, that's very different though, because there is much more of a symbiotic, like there is much more of an intertwined relationship between the government, how the government operates, and fuel. So I mean, we shouldn't pretend. Yeah, we shouldn't pretend like Exxon and all these guys are just like private entities just running out there. They're heavily subsidized by the government because of that national security,
they're heavily subsidized and they are raking in record profits.
And they're raking, which is a completely different issue to talk about. It's a different issue, but I think that's a different play than someone.
But if they're doing what you're saying, shouldn't be happening.
I think
if it was truly government run.
I think that energy is a little different because there are different modes of energy. So that's the other thing. It's our over reliance on oil that has left us in this kind of hellish hole. We could develop other types of energy, and so you could create a more competitive market space if you were to then put in different suppliers and actually give them a fighting chance, which we don't do right now because there's competing interests. So of course we put most of our money in oil as opposed to wind, solar. We're not pushing all this money towards renewables because the oil industry has a lot of powerful lobbying. So I mean that's why energy is a completely different ball game. I would say semiconductors, there is no real competitor. That's my point. It's not like you could do, it's either we'll put semiconductors in these chips or we'll do flat farts. Flat farts don't exist. There's no alternative to semiconductors. It's either you get the semiconductors or you don't get the semiconductors. And at that point, I would say that's when a government needs to step in and say that there is only one way to make these for now. And while there is only one way to make these, we need to make these. And then you private entities, you could also go out and try to make these because you've had all this power all along to go out and make these. You've raked in billions of dollars in profits over the last 30 years.
So you're saying like the baby formula stuff that you were saying, just that the government shouldn't replace private industry.
That's exactly right.
Just another player in the market.
To an extent, because here's the thing, it is an unfair player because the government has almost limitless resources, whereas a private entity, as much as I come down on them, they are still bound by what people are willing to buy and then what they can afford to acquire in order to then put something out on the market. If the government goes and says, all right, well, we have taxpayer dollars, so all this is at cost, no private entity is going to be able to compete with that, right? It's impossible. That's unfair. When it comes to semiconductors, my idea here is that if something is of national security, what the government should be doing in this instance is instead of just writing blank checks to the private enterprise, to private entities to do this, the government should just simply say, you have been derelict in your duty of protecting this resource for something that is so vital. What we are going to do is we are going to build our own manufacturing plants, and maybe we will own them for 10 years. In that time, you're free to go and do whatever you want to do with all your money and do competing plants. We will and then if you build semiconductor manufacturing to a sufficient degree within the United States, these borders, we will then decommission or sell you our factories that we've had to build in the interim. So it's like we're doing something of national security to ensure that we don't basically, fall into some sort of Mad Max hellscape with like no technology available whatsoever. And in the interim, you can do what you want to do, and you can either buy these plants from us, or if you don't want to buy these plants from us, then we're just going to sell these at cost because we put in all the money and work. And that's just that. And that's my point, is they should be given an opportunity. And it should be clear. It's things like that is what we should be curious
on like an analysis on how much waste that is, how long something would have to be operational, and factoring in an exit plan on how much that's going to cost us. I mean, it sounds like a lot of infrastructure to build, knowing that you're going to decommission it soon.
But we're not going to. Well, that's my point. I don't think anyone would want to decommission it necessarily, because these are people who are working there. These are people who have been hired by the government. They're government employees. I think that it is more than reasonable to allow private enterprise to buy them out and to basically reimburse the taxpayer.
Yeah, if they want to.
And that's my point, though. When people talk about, woe is the capitalist machine, if the government is competing with them, that's what I'm trying to say. It's not woe is the capitalist machine. If Intel and those guys don't want to buy the government's in-house semiconductor manufacturing plants, that's on Intel. Who cares? Then we just keep going on it, and the government just provides them at cost. And it's a benefit to the taxpayer because we know that at least this part of the building process for technology is at a ridiculously reduced rate, cannot be inflated, and then there will be rules on how much Intel could inflate on the price of the product at that point.
I mean, I don't know how this factors in, but I'm sure at least in time it will quickly become an inferior product.
Why would you say that? Well, to who? Inferior to who?
To consumers, like to have devices with government-made components, because unless we're like really competitive to attract that talent, knowing that it's a temporary operation. But I don't know. Like, how does that work?
Here's the thing that I will say to this. Historically,
like, where's the R&D?
Well, here's what I'm going to say. you yourself have championed much of the innovation that has come out of NASA, which was a government project. Historically, if you actually do look at projects we're talking about worldwide.
No one else is doing it.
No, what do you mean by no one else is doing it? No one.
NASA, I mean, until very recently, and even then, it's very focused disciplines. NASA doesn't have competitors. They barely have other countries to compete with.
Yeah, right. Well, there's
no competitors sending up, shuttles and
my point
stuff.
is that there is I would say it's a misunderstanding of the way in which government innovates because of I use the word entity a lot, various competing forces that want us to think government is ultimately the most inefficient producer.
No, I don't think it is. I think that if you want it to compete with the private sector, you need to fund it like the private sector.
Right. But the thing is, we do have the money and means to fund it. Instead of giving $54 billion to Intel, we could just use that money ourselves. That's my point. The money is there. It's just about the will and the desire to use it and use it in a way that could be the envy of the world. America can definitely build its own semiconductor plants that are top notch. We have top
notch today, but then what happens 5 years from now, 3 years from now?
Why would we stop it? I guess what I'm trying to say is that only in private entities do you kind of get to a point where innovation is not the most lucrative point of you want to make money. So you're going to keep your product at certain inferior standards in order to continue to sell more versions of that product. That's what I'm trying to put out there. When a government has no reason to do that, a government only would want to make the best product over and over again, ideally in an ideally well-funded government. That's what you would want to do. You just always want to make the best product because you could splurge on the innovation.
Yeah, I mean, everything the government does generates revenue, though.
Yeah, exactly. So you want to, but what are you trying to say?
They're not. It might behave just like a corporation, just like a private entity, wouldn't it?
You're trying to say that the government would make an inferior product in order because they have no competition, right? It's because there's no competition.
Well, if you're going to say that the government is going to innovate and outpace a private industry because they don't have to worry about a profit.
That's correct.
I don't know if that's true. I think that they would try and turn it into a revenue stream.
But I mean, historically, that's why I was trying to bring up the history of it. Historically, that has been true because there was the profits out of NASA. They were not going into that for profitability necessarily.
Yeah, but now I think they are actually adopting some type of model where they're trying to drive revenue, especially when
is that because they're severely underfunded, right? Probably. I mean, exactly. So it depends on it's not a chicken and egg scenario. It's really funny. It's sort of like the school problem that we always talk about. It's like, are public schools bad or do you just not fund them properly? And therefore they look like they're terrible because they don't have enough money to do what they need to do in order to get done and in order to be good. And so it's easy to attack them as like, oh, they're awful. Well, it's like, well, you cut their funding year on year for decades.
Yeah.
How are they supposed to compete?
If they were not, I would say that if they're not expected to, if they're well funded and not expected to be,
profit.
I don't know.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah. Then I guess you would just have to, you would have to legislate that in.
Oh, I mean, that would be part of it. I mean, again, it's similar to the highway system originally, and the Hoover Dam and all the other cool, amazing public works that we.
So just make it part of the defense spending bill.
That's exactly what you would do. Yeah, because that's the only way to make sure that it maintains its funding at an adequate level. And then, yeah. That's exactly what I would say. And like you said, I mean, I'm not opposed necessarily to contracts in order to build I'm okay if you want to bring in Intel to help us do this and pay them that way. But ultimately, this is about providing Americans with jobs and making sure that the taxpayer money is being properly allocated by building it in-house for the government. I don't like it when you're just sending billions of dollars. Even if you earmark it to say that this money can only be used for Intel to build these manufacturing plants.
I just don't understand. I mean, unless
most of the money is still going to go to shareholders.
Unless it's like I'm having trouble with the logistics of, all right, over the next 10 years, we are going to devote $500 billion.
Yeah.
And we're going to supplement this widget. And then 10 years after that, we're going to decommission this and we're going to pop up a new operation. And you're just going to have all this infrastructure building and you're going to build these companies, these departments, knowing that they're going to dissolve. I just don't.
Only if they're not dissolving necessarily. It would be an agreement, and it would probably 10 years is probably too short. So something 15, 20 years, what have you. It would only be in the event that private enterprise were to turn around and sufficiently produce the same product. And then you just have to say, is it fair for the government to compete with private enterprise when they are now matched at scale? That's the question. And that's a question for 2 decades down for the Congress at that time to sort of answer. So that's all you're doing, essentially. You're just putting a time limit to revisit the situation to say, is it fair for the government right now to continue to compete with the private space? Because both are adequately set up. We have all the semiconductors we could possibly need. If the private space is coming to the government with a deal to say we're gonna buy you out and pay the taxpayers money that you could then reinvest in whatever the hell we need to reinvest in for people, then that's a great deal too. That's why I doubt that it will simply be shuttered, where the government just says, all right, fine, we're just going to, all these people lose their jobs, we're just going to throw away all this money that we've spent and decommission it and sell it for scrap. We probably won't do that. Or we can repurpose it to do something else. There might be something different that has come up.
That's what I was saying. Are you going to repurpose that site? Or
anything could happen. My point is
developing land, I assume, to do something specific that we don't currently do.
Right. I mean, I'm just saying that we could do some sort of hydropower at that point, because basically semiconductors require a crap load of water in order to be manufactured. So there's definitely going to be whatever has been being built is going to have access to water, and so you can maybe turn it into some sort of hydro energy, or what was that wave energy?
The turbines.
Yeah, wave turbines or something. Who knows what we could do in 20 years? You don't know. We don't know. My point is we don't try. My point is we don't try. We just throw our hands up and just say, woe is us. We can't do anything without our corporate overlords. They're the only ones who could save us. Help us, corporate overlords. And I'm like, you're in this situation because corporations didn't find it profitable to be secure. Because they don't think like that. They don't think about your security. They don't think about people. It's not their job to think about people. Their job is just to make money. So they put you in this situation. So I'm like, why would you pay them for that? Why would you pay? You're paying your jailer. Someone puts you in jail and then you're going to work and give them money for doing so. That's crazy.
Well, you would be paying them to care at that point. You'd be paying them for a purpose.
Who cares? We already care. So we care. We should just pay ourselves because we care. That's so inefficient. Why would I pay someone else to care? I care. I pay because
they're experts in it already. They already have the infrastructure.
Screw that nonsense. That's ridiculous. We own universities. These people came from our universities. We're experts. They could do it
today. They could do it now. There'd be no ramp up.
The ramp up is well deserved if the money has a potential of being squandered. That's my point of view. But anyway, that's what grinds my gears. That's what grinds my gears. What do you have? Where are you going?
Well, sir, I thought that maybe you would have a retraction of sorts, because a few episodes back, you railed against the lottery, calling it, and I think I might be paraphrasing here, but the evilest institution on the planet.
It is. It's terrible.
And I think we might know someone who recently played the lottery.
It was $1 billion.
Everyone's got their price.
It was $1 billion. You're an idiot. I mean, there's a difference between being principled and being a fool. That's my quote. People out there, you could quote me on that. Antoine says, there's a difference between being principled and being a fool. It's $1 billion. I'm going to put $20 down on that. That there return is insane. So I had to play.
Not
it's still horrible.
Antoine's no fool. $100 million on $20
I can live with that. Worth it. I can be principled and live without that, because at the end of the day, you're getting that cut in half. So, but you cut in half $1 billion next year. It's like if you were a billionaire this year, you're going to be a billionaire next year because you're going to make that money back. So I don't know what to say about that.
Just wanted to call that out. Just wanted to call that out for everyone.
I am not above reproach.
Next time Antoine gets on a high.
I'm not a saint, people. I never claimed to be. I am weak. I have weaknesses. $1 billion was my weakness. What kind of idiot stands on the corner and says, I'm not playing? I am principled. It's an evil institution, and I refuse to put my name in for money that could just basically not only change your life, but basically the trajectory of your entire family line by winning that lottery. Which kudos to that person.
You could get that done in the millions, but yeah, there you go.
Kudos to that person in Illinois. I God help them, because I would never.
Isn't that amazing?
I would never want to be the sole winner of that amount of cash. Who walks into a 7-Eleven, buys a pack of cigarettes, a lotto ticket, and then walks out a billionaire? That's just insane. You're not ready for it. You're not ready for it.
I'll adjust.
Maybe
it'd be amazing. Anyway, just wanted to call that one out. So sure. I have two quick ones. And this one's more of just a PSA, because I came across this.
You have the PSAs. Is this another New York nuclear ad? Okay.
No, this one is not. But this one I found to be important. And it was actually cool, because then I kind of went down the rabbit hole really quick. And I was like, wow, I never knew this about these animals. And apparently it's common among insects. But I have a PSA for our listeners who might have enough outdoor space for plants. And this is about the monarch butterfly. It's in trouble. And you can help save them. So for anyone that might not be familiar with the monarch, it's basically that iconic butterfly that's usually used to represent butterflies anywhere that you might see. And the migration of the monarch butterfly is actually really crazy. It starts in Mexico, and it's multi-generational. The first generation of butterflies makes their way to the US. And then for the next 3 to 4 generations, they make their way farther and farther north, all the way to Canada. And then there's this super generation of monarch butterflies that travels 3,000 miles all the way back down to Mexico, the Sierra Madre Mountains. And these super generation, they live longer, they travel farther, they reproduce on different schedules than their parents and grandparents. So it's like this incredible thing that these butterflies do. Now, the monarch butterfly was added to the red list of threatened species, and they're categorized as endangered for the first time. And that's basically 2 steps away from extinction in the wild. Why is this happening? Well, you might guess. Habitat loss, climate change, use of pesticides and herbicides, right? So all those types of things. So what can you do about it? And I'm only mentioning this on the pod because it's so freaking simple. All you have to do is plant milkweed in your garden. That is the sole food that monarch butterfly caterpillars eat, and where they lay their eggs. There's no other plant that they're interested in. But there are different kinds of milkweed. A lot of them are invasive. So make sure you look up the non-native plant that belongs in your area, and I'll post a resource for that for this pod. It's on the National Wildlife Federation's Native Plant Finder if you're interested. But just wanted to call that out as a quick PSA, because I'm a big proponent of ecosystems, and it's really generally hard for a normal, average, everyday person to make an impact on something like at scale, at least. And all you have to do collectively, if we all planted milkweed, it wouldn't be an issue.
But the right kind of milkweed. Otherwise,
the right kind for your area. Otherwise, it messes with other plants. It messes with other things in your area. So you just want
this is a sharp sword. This is like a knife's edge of either this could go amazingly well, and we bring back monarch butterfly, or we just completely gouge our existing ecosystems. I mean, I like this PSA. I think it's great, but usually they don't come with such weighty, sort of cliff.
First of all,
here.
if you go to your local nursery, all right, then they'll have the milkweed for you.
I hope that they have the right kind. I hope they will. They're not going out.
But if you're getting it online, if you're buying it online, I would check the resource
will do it
to see the right one that you're buying. And usually, even if you're buying it, they'll say where it belongs.
Okay. All right. But this is a
super easy thing. You just put milkweed in the corner of your yard. You help them travel multiple generations.
I think that's impressive. That's really cool. You're right. It is so rare that people are given something that they can just do tomorrow that actually makes a difference. Everything.
Forget about it. You don't even need to worry about it. It's a weed. Just put it in somewhere.
I mean, even if it isn't invasive, you just said it is a weed. So do you now have to manage it, even if it does belong in your region?
No, I've seen it before. I feel like if you put it in a pot or you put it in the corner of a yard, it'll be somewhat contained. I don't think it's going to spread like dandelions across your property. It's like You can Google it. It's like I don't want to call it a bush, but it's somewhat contained.
I don't know what it looks like. Can you describe it?
No, go Google it.
No,
Google
I don't
milkweed.
want to. I want you to go into a very detailed description of milkweed. I want the listener to fully comprehend what they're setting themselves up for.
It is a beautiful plant. It is has got a tall type of. Yeah, if you've ever seen weeds growing and you see like one that grows kind of tall, and you're like, "What is that?" It's not just like a little patch of grass on the floor. It grows tall. It's like that, and it has these flowers to it. They're very nice. They're very nice flowers.
What colors?
I'm colorblind, Antoine.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Painful.
Digging in. Tried to get a wink, and you just kept going.
Painful. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All different colors, though. I think you can get different types.
Yeah, I can read. I'm going to read the colors.
No, but it's a small price to pay.
Yeah,
save a
that's
beautiful
cool.
species, and you get butterflies in your yard. There you go.
I guess, but that's really cool. Actually, I'm very impressed with that PSA. Rarely, again, do PSAs have such punch to them where it's like I could just do that tomorrow. In fact, I'm going to do it this weekend. I'm going to go out and I'm going to first figure out what a milkweed is, and when I do, I'm going to go to my local nursery and I'm going to purchase some. I guess I hope that they survive and without having someone with a green thumb, because I'm sure as hell not going to pay particular attention to them. But I hope they can live. So good kudos on them.
I think you can do it. So I had one more. That was like a quick weird one. In the category of weird news, our next story comes out of Moscow. And no, it is not related to Ukraine.
Okay. Very rare these days.
A chess playing robot grabbed the finger of its 7-year-old opponent and broke it.
Was it a real robot? Because Russia's had this happen before.
No, it wasn't a man in a suit.
Okay. Because it's a real robot. I'm just putting it out there. Russia's had these problems before. So I'm glad that it is not.
That would be even worse, wouldn't it? It was a man pretending to be a robot and he broke the finger of a 7-year-old boy.
Not going to put it past. Just say, not going to put it past. It actually would feel very apropos. It would feel very much in line with some of the scandalous stuff that has come out of Russia with regard to robotics. So I would not be shocked at all.
Chess playing robot, playing a 7-year-old boy, grabs his finger and breaks it. The president of the Moscow Chess Federation said, and I quote, "The robot broke the child's finger. Of course, this is bad." A video was shared online. I actually watched it on social media, and it shows the robot taking one of the boy's pieces and then grabbing his finger as he attempts to make a move. For those of you wondering, the boy did survive and finished the tournament in a cast, and the Chess Federation noted that the robot was rented.
Wow.
That it wasn't theirs.
The parents,
no quotes from them.
I'm just saying, as traumatic as it might be to have a robot reach across the aisle and break your finger, my son, you're going to finish this tournament.
Right? I could not believe that he actually finished it. A 7-year-old boy, I'd be like, dude, we're done. Calling it.
Well, that's what makes us weak. That's why we're just weak Americans, because that is some fortitude right there to say you are going back. You're going to finish this out. You're going to face down any other robots that may come across your path. You're not going to let them break you. So
the first thing that popped in my head was, I guess the first law of robotics is not widely accepted. You're not supposed to be able to harm humans. News agencies positioned it as the boy made his move too quickly, but shouldn't there have been a safety mechanism? I mean, my garage door doesn't shut if I'm under it. How could it not be scanning the board and saying like, okay, there's a human finger there. I'm not going to smash it into
What oblivion. Did this robot look like? Was it a humanoid?
No, it was like a mechanism with an arm that was just moving. It was like it was like a box with an arm type thing. And it was just kind of moving.
Sounds like it housed a human.
No, you could see it. It wasn't a box, an enclosed box. It was like a giant mechanism with an arm it was kind of smooth. It was definitely a robot. Now, was Jim Henson under the table puppeting the whole thing? Who's to know? But I don't know. So what this really, past the ridiculousness of it, what this really made me think of was when it comes to robots engaging with the public, is there or should there be some type of agency that develops standards to protect us? Now, there's a Federal Trade Commission, Consumer Protection Agency. There's a Consumer Product Safety Commission. But, you know, should there be something new?
I've talked about this. I've talked about this with the Google AI, that there should be a governing body that oversees.
So this is the same. You would group the
absolutely
like an advanced Roomba, because we have Roombas now, but I don't think there's anything
they would have to pass this test
outside of product protection, like to make sure this thing isn't going to light our houses on fire.
Right. No, but there should be an actual agency that goes out to test its again, it's self-awareness and its ability to harm others. When a Roomba is so rudimentary, that I think that falls under the consumer protection of like making sure the thing doesn't explode in your house or I don't know, suction up your cat's paws, you know what I mean? So I think that stuff is already tested from that standpoint. I don't know where this particular robot falls, but yes, as robotics become more and more advanced, the government absolutely needs a whole entity that is out there just to look at robots that are coming to market and testing for all these various scenarios. Absolutely.
And what do you do? Because obviously it's not like in the movies or in the books, right? Where a robot is like, you're a human, give you your space. It's not functionally, it's not that, right? It's like scanning, it's avoiding obstacles.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if it can determine whether or not something is a living, breathing entity and whether or not they can't puncture it as they could anything else that's inanimate. But what would that governing body be tasked with then? Is it just to make sure it's safe for the public? Is that
it could be even called the Asimov project. They're really just there to enforce the laws of robotics. They could just go by the original principles of robotics. They test every product just to ensure that the thing cannot harm people, cannot do this. And it doesn't have to be sophisticated in terms of, like you just said, this thing just needed the same laser guidance of a garage door opener to simply to understand that there was some object in its way when it was coming down to either do its move or whatever it was trying to do. First of all, what robot needs the force capable of breaking a finger to move a chess piece? What does a chess piece weigh? 0.01 ounces? Like, that's the other thing. Like, why is this robot moving with such ferocity? Has anyone even asked that? Like, to tell us that the robot was not doing this intentionally, but it uses that much speed, momentum, and force to move a chess piece?
It struck in anger.
I'm just saying, like, first of all, who puts their 7-year-old down with a robot that is moving this quickly and moving with that kind of aggression on a chess? Like, who's monitoring this entire
thing? Didn't. I mean, first of all, chess is played, at pace. I mean,
it can be.
It can be, right? And
it
said that he moved his piece too quickly. I think that the robot was going to grab, and he got his hand in there. It doesn't matter.
What force is that, though? My point is, this robot is a hair away from basically just like shattering the board. Like, if it missed its own piece, it would have just left a dent in the board. That's not something that is safe to play with. That's crazy. That's insane.
I just can't believe, in terms of like QCing this thing, that this never came up in the lab in its testing. I mean, clearly it had to play with opponents before they put it into this chess tournament.
You would hope. Unless this is the first time.
It never, you never got your hands. No one ever like messed with it at all. I just don't understand. Like, were they like, yeah, that thing will kill you. You just don't touch it. I don't know. Little loosey with the regulations over there.
Look, different countries, they're going to do their own thing. But yes, if this robot was being designed in the States, I would say that a commission would have to look at it just to ensure that it operates properly and that it just fulfills the 5 basic laws of robotics, which is it. This is where it failed. It just failed one because it harmed a human being. It just should not be allowed to do that, even if it is by accident. And I put up my quotes for the listener because, I still think this is a man that was upset he was losing to a 7-year-old. And decided to end things.
A puppeteer pulling on strings
before it got insulting. That's how I feel about this personally.
Yeah, you could be right. You could be right. It was all publicity stunt. So that's it. That's that. I don't know if you have anything.
No, I think I went pretty. I think I went pretty forcefully on the whole semiconductor, Pelosi, Taiwan.
Yeah, there you go.
Debacle. You've done a nice little PSA. You did a little thing on our, robots harming children, as we like it here, children in danger. That's our MO. So I think that's a good episode of Retraction.
There you go, guys. There you go, folks.
Where can they find us?
At Retraction Media. Hit us up on Twitter. Let us know your thoughts. Rate us on your favorite podcasting platform and shoot an episode over to someone you know.
And with that, Retraction.